Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our college athletic night and annual event that we offer. My name is Heidi Hayes, and I'm one of the guidance counselors at BC High. And tonight I'm partnering with my colleague in the guidance department, Mr. Eddie Simmons, and with Mr. Bartlett, who's the athletic director at BC High. Before we begin, we will start our evening with a prayer. And this is a prayer of thanksgiving. We thank you, God our Father, for the shelter and comfort of our homes, for the love and companionship of our family and friends, for our health and our many gifts and abilities, and for all the blessings which we take for granted. Hear our prayer for all who are less fortunate than we are, and bless those who work to help them. For Jesus Christ's sake, amen. And so we're grateful to all of our BC High families for joining us this evening. And we're certain there are plenty of athletes in the audience who are exhausted after day 2 of tryouts for winter sports too. And so just a little bit of business before we begin. Our webinar is going to be recorded, and a link to the recording will be posted in an upcoming Eagle Update, which is the weekly newsletter sent out by Principal Adam Lewis on Thursday afternoons. In addition, in the download section of the Eagle Update, we will also be posting a few documents intended to remind you of the main points that are covered tonight. And so we're thrilled to have 4 panelists joining the webinar tonight, and know that they'll have plenty of information and wisdom to share about the world of college athletics. And so I'll have them introduce themselves, starting with Joey Brink.
Hey guys, what's up? I'm Joey Brink. I'm currently a Bowdoin football player. I'm class of 2024. And so my BCI journey, so I played football, volleyball, and played on the freshman basketball team and also the indoor track team my sophomore year. So one thing that you guys might know about me and might like to know is my sophomore year, broke my collarbone, and my junior year, I tore my ACL. So I had some ups and downs in the recruiting process. So I'm open to questions about that as well. And so I'm a Bowdoin football player right now, and that's what I do.
Thanks so much, Joey. We'll move on to Mr. Orlando Patterson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Orlando Patterson, head football coach and assistant director of admissions at the Hill School, located in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. It's my first year here. I've also spent several years at other prep schools in the New England area in Virginia, and recently spent 2 years at BC High.
Thank you. We'll move on to Coach Greg Raymond.
Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Raymond. I'm the head lacrosse coach at Hobart College. I'm in my 9th year at Hobart College. Previously, I had an 8-year stint at Princeton University as the assistant coach and associate head coach, with a small gap at Drexel University. Prior to coaching at Princeton, I graduated from Johns Hopkins University in 2005.
Thank you. And then Mr. Corey Eunice.
Thanks, Heidi. Great to be with you all this evening. My name is Corey Eunice. I'm the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Fairfield University. Glad to be able to be with you. I'm also the rep who will work with any student who's thinking about Fairfield from BC High. So we love that special connection between our 2 schools.
Thank you, Corey. And if I may give you a shout out, Corey just spent an entire day, maybe 2, interviewing our students. And so we're very grateful to him and his staff. So thank you so much for your introductions, everyone. We're going to start with some questions for Mr. Bartlett and our panelists. We'll invite Mr. Simmons to speak briefly about NCAA eligibility, and then we'll open the floor for questions from our families. We'll jump right in. So for Mr. Bartlett, could you tell us, how will a BC High student know if they are a college athletic caliber recruit?
Thanks, Ms. Hayes. Honestly, I think most of the time kids do not know. And so it's really important that they enjoy the experience, the journey. And I think a lot of focus on, for families coming into BC High, it's, what are we going to make varsity, what year, college recruitment, and let that take, and I'm sure Coach Raymond, Mr. Patterson, Coach Patterson, and Joey can talk more about this, but the big thing I think is to make sure you don't lose focus of your high school playing experience, to enjoy it. And you have lifelong friends. You have coaches who are teaching you not just the sport, but about life lessons. If you're able to play at the collegiate level, that's great. And at some point, you'll have a coach contact you. And if you don't, you don't. And I think it's, like I mentioned before, I think many times to our student athletes, it's not having that self-doubt. It's also being proactive, reaching out to college coaches, whether by email, sending game film. I think the BC High name is out there. There's so many college coaches across the country, not just the region, New England region, who know BC High. So making sure you reach out and whatever sport you play. But I think the bottom line, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions for the panelists moving forward. My biggest point is whatever sport you play, if you do end up playing a sport in college, pick the school based on, this is going to be home for your next 4 years. Take the sport, remove the sport, pick the school based on whether you want a big school, small school, in the city, in the burbs, whatever it is, that's going to be your home the next 4 years. So a school that I may like, the person next to me on either side of me may not like that school because of number of criteria. So pick the school based on, this is home for the next 4 years. So look forward to answering any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Joey, I'm going to move on to you. My first question is, can you talk about the ways that you put yourself on college coaches' radar during high school? For instance, any camps or showcase events that you attended? What were they like? What did you learn? And is there anything that you would have done differently?
Yeah, so I think Coach Bartlett touched on this earlier. It's like being proactive is really important. So like reaching out and sending your like making a highlight film of yourself, like this might just be for football, but if like track like times, like just reaching out to coaches is really being proactive in that like stage is really important, because that's like, I would say it's the stage we're in right now. And then the camps and showcase I attended, I went to like New England Elite, which is I thought was a really good camp because everybody's there. There's so many college coaches to maybe get on the college coaches radar. So I thought that was really helpful in like how I was able to like showcase my abilities to the college coaches, which I thought was pretty cool. So, but one thing about me, I wasn't able to camp my summer going to senior year because of my injury. So one thing I'd like to stress for that too is like, if you're not ready to camp and if you're not ready to like show your top talent, don't camp, because that it's just gonna cross you off a list. So like you want to be on your best shape and your best like performance ability when you go at these camps, because it's just an easy check off the list if you're not ready to perform. So I thought that was one thing. So if you're gonna go to camp, be ready. And yeah, so I just say the one thing that I learned is just be more proactive and be like, reach out to coaches and build a relationship with them. And that's one big thing.
Thank you so much. Another question for you, Joey. Do you think you could bring us through a typical weekday at college when you're in season?
Yeah, of course. So my season just ended actually. So it was actually a really demanding season. So my like Mondays, so I had 3 days out of the 5 weekdays. I had a 7 a.m. lift. And then every single day of the week, we had an 11:45 meeting for an hour to go over game plans. And then we had a 5 to 7 practice. So I was like counting this up during the season. It was like 5 hours was like dedicated to football each day. So I thought, so that was just like my typical, and then we had school in between. So you just had to manage your school schedule with your football schedule. So so school was in between those. So yeah.
I was curious if you ever had to miss class to go to games.
So I actually did have to miss one class because we had to travel up to Hamilton, which is like a 7-hour bus ride. So I did have to miss one econ class, but typically on like typical travel days, we don't really miss class.
Thanks so much. I wanted to move on to Coach Raymond. Can you describe the type of communication from the student athlete that you expect? Giving details about when the student first ideally would be in touch, what kind of type of communication works best, what kind of information should he include in his communication, and how often should he be in touch with the coach?
Sure. I think, Joey did a great job explaining what the role of the many and the volume of the high school athlete that we're pursuing now is, and it is being proactive. I think, all sports are very different. I think what what all athletes need to consider are how much different divisional recruiting is, Division 1, 2, and 3, how much different sport to sport recruiting is, and within those sports, how much different each coaching staff's recruiting is. So there are many challenges, but to Coach Bartlett's point, how do you find enjoyment in those challenges? I think that's a good way to look at this. We're talking to Joey about his football season, and he was elated at how well he did, how well their team did, and that's the goal here, is to find the home that was spoken about, but the way to do so is being true to that communication. So in your emails that you provide, and I can speak only on behalf of really what a Hobart lacrosse staff is looking for. We love a detailed email with GPA information, with transcript information, with any standardized testing information, and a great idea of where we can see you play. And then also, if we can have a video of some caliber, highlights, game video, spots of game video, we're going to look at it, especially if we're attracted to those specific details you provided. But, I think we need to know what type of student we're recruiting, and we need to know what type of player we're recruiting before we're going to start a relationship. That's as simple as we can put it. And then when we get to that next point, we want to see the value in the relationship that you're going to continue. Meaning, if we do reach out, you get back in a timely fashion, and you do a good job describing and articulating your interests, why you play a specific sport, and why you need to be why you're going to continue to be so passionate about it. I think you can do that in any way, shape, or form. We tend to mold to what the athlete likes. We feel like we get the most response through a text message. We feel like we get the quickest response through a text message. So we stick to email and text and a lot of phone calls. And what's grown out of this, one positive out of this pandemic and all the Zoom stuff, is how comfortable people are putting their face on a screen. So we do that a considerable amount now as well. So any ways that you're comfortable through your phone, through your email, and the information you provide is, what type of student are you? And what type of athlete are you? How can we see you play? And then how do you carry on that conversation, have an ability to articulate going forward? That's going to indicate how well or how in depth we want to get with that relationship. So again, I think the first part is really important. Recognize the different rules each division has. That's very important. And within those differences, recognize how different each sport is. And then also how different team to team you're going to get a recruiting feel. So there's lots of rights, there's lots of wrongs, and if you're passionate about what you're doing and you're enjoying this process, you're going to be able to differentiate between those rights and wrongs. So make this journey your own. That's the best way to put it.
Thank you so much. One more question I have for you, Coach Raymond, is how does a student athlete know if a college coach is truly interested?
I think the same way any relationship, if you reach out to somebody, they don't get back in touch with you, you should probably move on. I think you keep knocking at the door and there's no reciprocated interest. You're wasting time. And you don't want to do that within this process, because as Joey put, you only have so much, and you may hit a bump in the road with a collarbone injury or with an ACL or something that may jam you up. So take advantage of those situations where we get a lot of those emails. And I could tell you, I probably got about 120 today, just with videos with this and that. And so the volume that we get, we have varying methods to make sure that we respect that time and we respond to those emails in certain ways. So if you get a response back and it's a genuine response back, you're hearing from a coach, that is a specific interest. If you get a phone call, that's specific interest. An intimate text, that's specific interest. If you get a letter about a camp, an email return about a camp, about a prospect day. Now, that's not as intimate as those before mentioned forums, but that doesn't mean we're not interested. We just feel like we need to see you more. So there's a lot of different levels of this. For instance, we reach out September 1st to all juniors. That's when we can start communicating to juniors in high school, September 1st. And lots of coaches will call 40. At Hobart, we call much less. We want to create an intimate environment with the guys we definitely want to see again. But then we start to grow interest through it. Will he come to camp? Will he come to our campus and play for us? And that's when this thing can take off a little bit further. So you're going to have to do a little bit of work and recognize that if I don't get a call on the day I'm supposed to, or an email right away, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not interested. I may have to get to that campus and play in front of them again. So, but if you're not hearing back at all, it's time to move on to a different institution.
Excellent. Thank you. Mr. Patterson, I'm going to move on to you. I'd like to ask you, when does it make sense for a student to consider a postgraduate year before trying to play college athletics?
Great question. Thank you. I would say immediately after you move on from the last school, as Coach Raymond mentioned. There are a variety of ways to approach a postgraduate year. We have students here at the Hill School who are strictly here for academic purposes, but for the athletic reasons, more often right now, compared to previous years, we're seeing a lot of applications because there are limited roster spots at colleges and universities for a variety of schools. So colleges, universities are unofficially, encouraging kids to, if they can, and if they're young enough, to take a postgraduate year. It's an opportunity to familiarize yourself with being at a boarding school, away from home, growing a little bit, whether it's athletically, academically, socially. That opportunity is here. So that's where we see the majority of our postgraduate applications.
Excellent. Thank you. If you don't mind, one more question. Do you think you could, bring us through a typical day in the life of a student in a postgraduate year? I know you're familiar with the student experience at BC High, having been here, but just to compare those experiences.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we asked our boys to arrive on August 23rd, and they didn't go home until, I want to say, mid-October. They're here. We had 2 days for practices. Our first scrimmage was, I think, September 4th, 5th, and I'm speaking from a football perspective. So after our school starts, you're getting up. You'll have a morning workout similar to Joey. We'll work out around 6:30 for about an hour and a half. Classes start at 8:25 on a normal day. You'll get out of school at 3:30. Practice will start at 4:15. You'll practice for about an hour, 45 minutes to 2 hours. Head on over to dinner. And then you'll have your evening study hall from 7:30 to 9:30. Most games are on the weekends, so you'll have your time. You're either having a home game or you're traveling. Our average travel time is around 2 hours to other prep schools within our region. I think our longest trip this year was about 4.5, 5 hours to Pittsburgh area. We're doing a significant amount of traveling, so you are not home. For our student athletes or the football postgraduates, a typical week for us, let's say if we play on Saturday, Sunday, I'll give them a day off. Monday, they are on the varsity. They will be lifting in the afternoon immediately after school. They'll do a body check, an equipment check, and then we'll watch film as a team. Our JV guys will practice Tuesdays, what I like to call install Tuesdays. I send them film, game plan for the upcoming week, and we'll install anything that we need that is new Tuesday afternoon. Wednesdays, our work Wednesday, our longest day, where you'll lift in the morning. You'll have a full day of school. Actually, it's a half day, excuse me. You'll have a half day of school. After that, you'll lift again. You'll meet with your coaches. We do have a yoga instructor come in, and then we'll have our full 2 hours of practice. So it will mimic or mock a collegiate atmosphere. Thursday, it's a normal day. You'll get out of school at 3:30, practice for 2 hours. And Friday is a walkthrough, game day on Saturday.
Definitely sounds intense. Corey, I'd like to move on to you. Can you describe the interaction between athletic coaches and your office and admissions?
Absolutely. And I've had a unique experience that I've worked at schools. Currently, I'm at a Division I school, but I've worked at a Division II and Division III institution. So some of it is different, some of it is the same, but what I found that the most successful operations are ones where enrollment and the admission office has regular meetings and regular open dialogue with our partners in athletics. At the Division I level, a lot of that interaction happens from the my job or the Dean of Admissions job directly with the compliance officer, because there's a big step of NCAA compliance that Mr. Simmons will be discussing in the not too distant future. But what happens is a lot of data is being shared between coaches and being shared between admission offices. Admission offices have to be able to proactively work with the coaching staff to talk about what they're looking for in the next year. So we want to know roughly how many roster spots they're looking for. And then from our standpoint, what are we looking for in the average student from a GPA standpoint? What our merit cutoffs are going to be? A lot of times, and it's basically nonstop now because of the way the NCAA has issued different dead periods and recruiting periods and non-recruiting periods. With a school with 20 sports, I'm reviewing and pre-reading applications for recruited athletes basically 12 months out of the year now. And so that's because of great relationships with the coaches so that we can say, hey, this is a guy, yes, that you're after. At the same time, we want to make sure that the student can be successful academically. And so there's and be able to retain and be able to graduate in 4 years. And so that's somewhat of a universal at the D1, 2, and 3 level. At the D1 level and some at D2, when compliance gets involved, obviously we want to make sure that how we're doing things, what we're communicating is all above board and meshes with the appropriate periods of time. So the one constant that I can say is direct, open communication between admission and coaches and vice versa. That's what allows for a really successful recruitment process and alleviates some of the stress and anxieties that are associated with choosing the right fit school for the student.
Thank you. One more question. What is the most common misconception that recruited student athletes have about the admission process?
Well, there's a bunch, so it's hard to limit to one. I may give a couple, but one of the big ones is that they're guaranteed to be admitted, right? And so that the coach talked to me, I'm coming to campus for an official visit. Now, at times, the coaches know exactly what they're looking for, both academically and athletically. And so 90%, 85% of the time when the coach says, yeah, when we've gone through a pre-read, we're very confident about your ability, then it usually does work out. But at times, a student will think, well, because I'm hearing from the coach and I'm getting direct outreach, that I'm a shoo-in from the admission standpoint. And that is not always the case. So you want to make sure that you're having direct and open communication with the coach, that you're navigating each step of the admission process. You're a recruited athlete. That's wonderful. You still have to go through the published deadlines. You still have to send it your application, your essay, your recommendations. You don't want to create some red flag that doesn't need to be there. If you think you're a shoo-in for that school, you still want to make sure you have your teacher recs. You still want to make sure that you're doing well academically and that you're not withdrawing from classes senior year and you're taking a good senior schedule and all of the things that your wonderful school counselors are going to talk to you about through the process. There's reasons for that. And so please don't give up on what you need to do as a student. One other thing that I'll throw in there is that deadlines really matter, right? And so every year we have students who are NLI people, signed a national letter of intent, and they missed the deadline for early decision, and they want to sign their letter, and they want to have an offer of admission, but they didn't apply on time, or they didn't get their documents in. Make sure you're sticking to the published deadlines. And the second big misconception is that there is far more athletic money out there than merit money. At the Division I level, at many sports, you can stack scholarships, so you can get a merit scholarship as well as receive partial athletic scholarships. So do your homework and make sure that if cost is going to be a big factor in where you decide to go, understand all of your options, understand how merit can coalesce with athletic aid, and that most of you that will receive a roster spot and sign an NLI may not get a full, traditionally called a full ride. Many of you will get partials or percentages of scholarships. So see how that factors into the overall cost and the overall affordability.
Excellent. Thank you. I wanted to ask Mr. Simmons, Eddie Simmons, could you explain what's important for BC High families to know about NCAA eligibility?
Sure. I'm going to share a slide here that will give us some information about that topic. So here we go. So these are the Division I academic requirements for student athletes. All of these requirements are similar for Division II, except that the benchmarks for the GPA and test scores are a little bit lower. Um, the requirements for Division III are dependent on the admission standards of individual colleges. So here you can see all the core course requirements. All of these core course requirements are also graduation requirements here at BC High. So if you manage to graduate from here, you should be all set. One thing to note that is that courses outside of the core requirement are not considered by the NCAA when determining your GPA. So if you got a few A's in your art classes, those unfortunately won't be taken into account by the NCAA. I'm gonna scroll down here. On the second page here, you can see that we've got a sliding scale with GPA and SAT or ACT scores. These are just the bare minimums needed to be eligible. Our hope is that students will set the bar much higher for themselves here at BC High. That said, most of our students don't have trouble meeting these standards, but if your son has struggled a lot at BC High, it's definitely worthwhile having a conversation with our guidance counselor about this. The important thing to keep in mind is that if you think you might be interested in playing a college sport, you'll need to set up an account with the NCAA Eligibility Center during your junior year here at BC High. There's a $90 fee associated with setting up an account. And at the end of the school year, we'll upload your transcript to the NCAA Eligibility Center. At some point between your junior and senior year, you'll need to send your official ACT or SAT scores to the NCAA as well. And then lastly, the guidance department will upload your final transcript to the NCAA website after graduation. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing here. If I can figure that out.
And as Mr. Simmons is going to change the screen, we wanted to open up the floor for questions from our guests, our attendees. So feel free at this point to add any questions that you may have for our panelists in the Q&A feature.
Ms. Hayes, while we're waiting for the questions to come up, I just wanted to make another point and then also just ask Coach Raymond to comment on a topic. But it's very difficult, obviously, to play college sports. The percentages are out there. Not to say it can't happen. And I also want to make sure, and Coach Raymond alluded to, it's maybe not getting a email back. You have to really have a thick skin in this. It's a business. It's not personal. Don't take anything personally. It's just a situation where, as Coach mentioned, it could be a positional. Maybe they're not looking for a point guard. Maybe they're not looking for a kicker. But then you keep going on to the next school, and that's where you're going to keep knocking on doors. You may not have an email back at one school. Maybe another school emails you back and says, "Hey, we're interested." Also, keep in mind, Division I. I'm sure Coach Raymond can mention how he's recruiting across the country. Division III. Joey plays in Division III. Division III's college sports is very competitive. It has a lot of talented athletes. Joey was, basically an all-scholastic type player here, Catholic Conference All-Star. There's not a huge difference from D1 to D3. There's probably some D3 players who should be playing Division I. There's probably some Division I players who should be playing Division III. So don't feel like if it's a Division III school, it's something that that's below me. It's not. The other piece on the flip side, parents, if you feel like, if my son's a junior and not starting, does this mean he can't play college sports? We have plenty of examples of kids not starting until senior year at BC High who eventually go on to play a college sport. The BC High name is strong out there, as I mentioned before, and we have a lot of talented athletes where maybe it's not until senior year where we start. And to that point, Coach, I just wanted to ask you, I know you mentioned, 120 videos sent today. What can our kids know or take away? Like, what should they put on their videos? Is there anything to separate them from the other 119 other kids? And then the other question is, if you can talk about walk-ons or preferred walk-ons, if a kid is really set on playing D1 or D2 and they don't get an offer, how does a walk-on situation happen at your school?
Yeah, well, first understand that the forums that we have for evaluation are, I want to say maybe 3-4-fold. I think the interest that sparks off a video, it comes from recognition of speed and athleticism and skill set and the things that we believe will translate well to our specific system. But then we have to see that person live. We have to see him we have to see them up close and personal, and we have to see what type of intangibles this athlete has. So to Coach Bartlett's point, you know, there are many athletes to quote unquote choose from. You know, I think this you have to the recognition of how hard our job becomes because of that volume is will help you through this process. That we don't have an easy road determining which student athletes will be successful at this level, and this is why. There are tons of places, tons of camps to go to, tons of showcases to go to, tons of tournaments to play in, tons of high school forums to get seen. But very rarely does a young man stick out on a field in terms of how passionate he or she is about what they're doing. And what gets involved here is the evaluation. What gets subjected is the passion for the game and why you started to play it. And because if anybody said anything truer on this panel tonight, it was Joey talking about his week and how much his coaches ask him to do in order to be successful and prepared to win a game. And that doesn't change. It increases with division, it increases with level, it increases as the season goes on. And there may be a few lonely moments there. So we need to go back to the beginning and say, okay, is this young man at this showcase? Is he sending us this video? Is he playing in this game for the right reasons? And does he want to go play at the next level? That's one of the first questions that we ask is, why do you want to play Division I lacrosse? And the answer has to have depth. It can't be, I want to contribute, I want to because then, for a lot of these athletes now, the grass becomes greener elsewhere if they don't have immediate success. And that's not the way college athletics works. So if you're going to send that video, you have to have a great description behind why you're sending it and why you're interested in the institution. That helps, but also why do you want to play this sport every day? Like Joey said, 5 hours a day. Why do you want to commit 5 hours a day at a place like Bowdoin, which academics aren't easy there? Why are you willing to do that? And explain to us why you want to do that for 4 years. And if you can, then any video that you send is going to be worthwhile. And any showcase you go to is going to be worthwhile. And then parents are going to soon realize wherever this young man or young woman commits, they're going to be completely engulfed in that commitment, and they're going to have a very enjoyable experience. Injury aside, playing time aside, wins and losses aside, they're going to be able to commit completely to that program's everyday effort. And so how you separate in the recruiting process is let us see the competition, let us see the passion, be able to speak about it a little bit. Why did you start playing this sport way back when? When did you realize that you loved it? And what's going to help you carry you through these 4 years and maybe the plight through an athletic career, because there's adversity to come for sure. So when you're beginning that recruiting process, have that determination done before you send a video. And then we'll see your athleticism. We'll see your passion. And then when we go see you live, we'll be able to hear you. We'll be able to see your interaction with a teammate. We'll be able to see how you respond to coaching. And then if we ask you to come to campus and come play in front of us, then we'll really kind of put you into the grinder there and say, okay, go through this exact drill we put our guys through. It's one of our hardest focus drills. Let's see how you handle yourself. And then that's when the relationship really starts to make sense. So in the beginning, like Coach Bartlett said, this has to be an enjoyable process for you. Is it stressful? Sure. Is it challenging? Sure. but anything worth the salt's going to be. It's supposed to be, because if you want that fulfilling experience, you got to put all your effort into it. So the pressure that comes with it needs to be enjoyable as well. But first and foremost, don't send the video unless you're prepared to describe why you're sending it, and how impactful this athletic and student experience is going to be for the rest of your life. I think that's a really big key to this thing that's going to create more enjoyment for a lot more families. We just see it fading. We see it all about evaluation. And am I sending the right, the words that you put in an email are not going to give you a spot on a roster. They'll spark interest. You know, what's going to get you on that roster is your ability to articulate how much you're going to impact that program, and in the right ways you're going to do so. So the steps to it have to start. I mean, it sounds corny. I'm a pretty corny guy, but starts in your head and your heart, really. And how much do you love what you're doing, and how much you're prepared to articulate that love? Because when you get to this level, Division 1, 2, or 3, there has to be love for the game. There has to be dramatic love for the game, or some things are going to fall by the wayside.
Heidi, may I add something briefly? I know Coach Raymond and Coach Bartlett touched on two things. Coach Bartlett in the beginning was he mentioned your high school experience, and in regard to Coach Raymond talking about an evaluation for some sports, especially when I'm looking at film and I'm recruiting postgraduates, I want to see what other sports you're playing. How can your skill set transition onto the football field, whether you're running track, playing basketball, or lacrosse, and sometimes that translates into the the collegiate recruiting as well. So again, to Coach Bartlett's point, definitely enjoy your high school experience. Play more than one sport if you can, because your skill set can transition into, a variety of ways that coaches can evaluate you, and know that you love to compete, not just necessarily play soccer or hockey, but you love to compete. So you're playing, 2 to 3 sports throughout your high school career, which is always helpful for a coach to hear.
Terrific, thanks. So I'm just seeing a few questions in the Q&A. The first one is about, it's a question specifically about finding camps for a soccer player where college coaches have access to the students playing. And I would guess we can broaden this beyond soccer. How is it that you find camps that are going to be valuable to play at?
I can speak to that. I know our boys soccer team went to a tournament in upstate New York called the Next Level Showcase, and it all depends on what your coaches are setting up for a schedule. So this is a jamboree. I think there were 7 or 8 soccer fields, 7 or 8 soccer games going on at a time, and a variety of schools from the Northeast were attending there, and then a bunch of soccer coaches were in attendance as well. So I think it all depends on your club or your high school schedule. Some purposely do that. I know within different leagues in different areas around the Northeast region, they'll set up these showcases and big tournaments for these high school teams, where all the coaches can get together and watch the student athletes play.
And I'm sure it helps, Ms. Hayes, like if Coach Patterson wanted to see someone and they could email him and say, which camps are you going to be working at? The same with the Fairfield coaches. I'm sure Mr. Eunice would mention that his coaches would say, I'm at this camp. I'm sure Coach Raymond, if someone emailed him, which camps will you be at? So being proactive, going back to what Joey said, being proactive and just emailing the coaches, the college coaches, and asking them if they're going to be at certain camps. I think they would at least respond back and say, yes, I'll be at these camps.
I think that's one of the key elements in the email that I talked about, beside that broader span of why, is where exactly can we see you, and what team you're playing for, what jersey number you are. All those things are very important. And I think what you're going to find is a lot of people running these showcases. Soccer and lacrosse are very similar in our recruiting, and when it starts and the volume to which we deal with, you're going to find that unfortunately, a lot of these showcases are underwhelming in their organization, and you're going to have some difficulty where a name may not match a jersey number. Make sure you follow up on that whole process. We do our best to make sure that we have all information beforehand. But tell us where you are. Tell us when you're going to be there. The name of the event, the team that you're playing for, and make sure you do a good job differentiating between what an individual showcase means in terms of how you're going to play, and what a team or a club showcase means in terms of our evaluation. Those are a little bit different, and I can broaden that a little bit. But the soccer coach at Hobart's a very close friend of mine, and the similarities with our sports and our recruiting is uncanny. They're almost exactly the same.
Thank you. Just kind of quickly related to that, embedded in another question was how do you know if a coach saw you play?
What kind of work are your coaches doing for you? Really, I think that's going to help you out a ton. If you're paying good money for club perspective and club evaluation, that coach has to do his job and reach out to those areas of interest. And so with the volume that we receive, and I hate to keep using that same word, sometimes we may not reciprocate in that email or recognize exactly who that player is on an on-field standpoint, especially in the initial evaluation. But if the club coach is doing his job or doing her job, they will call and say, "Did you have a chance to see number 83?" They're very interested in Hobart College for some specific reasons, and they can do their job to tell that coach your strengths, maybe some weaknesses, and maybe some reasons why you want to continue a relationship with this young athlete. So that's a huge indicator of how your recruiting process can grow. Is what are your high school coaches willing to do from a communication standpoint, and what are your club coaches willing to do from a communication standpoint? So your first order of "did they see me" should be to that coach and say, "Do you mind reaching out? And I'm very interested in Hobart College. Would love to know if they had a chance to see me play on Sunday, Saturday, whatever it may be."
Thank you. Next question, can you touch on the role of BC High coaches in the recruiting process and what we can expect for our student athletes in this regard?
Yeah, so that is part of their job description, is to help with the college recruitment. Coaches are very accessible and meeting with the student athletes and or the parents. So sending an email to the coaches if the student athlete wants to speak to the coach in person, or send an email and set up a meeting. All our coaches are there and available to meet with families. And I think it's important for guidance purposes just to kind of work with guidance as well. The coach and the guidance counselor and the families working together, so it's not two different separate entities asking questions. Guidance counselors coming over to the athletic department saying, where's this student, can they really play at this school? So it's making sure the coaches work with guidance, work with the student athlete. And then ultimately, once the student athlete is connected to the college coach, and again, coaches can comment on this if they want to, but once the college coach connects with the student athlete and gets the game film, they may ask a number of questions more on a character standpoint with the high school coaches. But once it gets to the collegiate level, the high school coaches aren't as involved with the college coach, unless it's like I said, for a character reference. It then goes to the college coach and the student athlete. And Coach Raymond, correct me if I'm wrong, or Orlando, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, that's well said. I think when we get to that point where we've seen an athlete play a decent amount in a couple different forms, hopefully it's through a film, through a club environment, through a high school environment, and seeing maybe some individual showcases versus some team showcases, and in lots of different ways. Our call is one, are all our evaluations verified? We've seen them play a bunch, and we've been impressed. We think that there are lots of things that could help from a superficial standpoint. Now, again, it couldn't have been said better. Is who is this athlete going to be when it's 38 and rainy, right? And who are they going to be during midterm week? And with a paper due on Friday and a scouting report for Syracuse that needs to be returned on Thursday. How are they going to handle situations like that? Now, more so just let's start to find out information on what type of teammate this individual is going to be. You know, the leadership qualities they can provide, the selflessness they can provide. Those are things we can't see with a helmet on and a ball in your stick. You could be the best player on the field and the worst teammate at the same time. It's a tricky situation. So that call is a lot of it is to one, help facilitate the communication. That's another is, you know, I texted a few times. We do the same thing. We reach out and sometimes we don't hear back. So we check in a couple times and say, is this something I'm moving on from? And like Coach Bartlett said, we don't take it personal. If it's a yes, we move on. We go find another. But if it's a no, they're interested, then all right, let's dig into who this person's going to be from a teammate perspective first, from a leader perspective second, and then from an on-field at the next level perspective third.
Thank you. Can you please explain what is Division 1, 2, and 3, just distinguishing what those 3 levels are and answering what is the NCAA?
Well, I can do it, but I imagine I may get some things wrong. So coaches, please jump in. So there's 3 levels of competition at the collegiate level. Division 3 is the largest in terms of the number of schools, the number of programs, and they're non-scholarship. Division 2 is very niche. There's not a ton of Division 2 places. They tend to be located in New England, through Pennsylvania, and then on the West Coast. They have scholarships, not necessarily the same numbers that most or many D1 programs have. And Division 1 is what we think of when we think about collegiate sports in general. You know, for the most part, it's your Power 5 conferences, it's your MAC conferences, it's the mid majors and whatnot, and they offer scholarships. And there is the Division 1 and 2 level, you have to have go through the NCAA clearinghouse. And the NCAA is a organization that kind of has some oversight over collegiate athletics at all levels. Not every college in the country is NCAA. However, 90% of the schools are under the NCAA umbrella.
Thank you. At what point in their BC High career should an athlete meet with their guidance counselor to handle the NCAA posting and establish their interest in college sports? Well, I can say that, you know, if a student knows that he's really interested in playing college sports, we'd want to know that as early as the student wants to share that. There's no conversation that's too early in that regard, so that we're aware, and we can then factor that into the college planning discussions that we're having with the student. Regarding the eligibility center for the NCAA, we will ask the students to register with the NCAA in junior year, and we will be posting their end of junior year transcript sometime probably in June, if I'm correct. I know Eddie handles that process in our office.
Yeah, every summer after final grades come out, I upload all the transcripts for all of our juniors and then for all of our seniors to the NCAA eligibility website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The students will also send to the NCAA either their SAT scores or their ACT scores. And typically they're sending those scores in their senior year, in the senior fall. Another question, this was a soccer family who's asking, but basically, is sophomore year too early to reach out to coaches? At what point is it appropriate to reach out? It probably depends on the sport, but wanted to throw that out there.
I can touch on that. It definitely, I think it depends on the sport. And you'll see it from the other side as well. Some college coaches will reach out unofficially to those students as well. There are various levels of communication and contact that coaches can have with student athletes throughout their high school career. But from a family perspective, If there is interest in a specific school, whether it's academically driven or athletically driven, feel free to reach out. And it also depends on where you are projected, to play at the next level. If you are able to play at the next level, I think we have to be honest with ourselves and understand where can we actually play. Are we a Division III student athlete? Are we a Division II student athlete? What level of Division I do we think we are, at that during that sophomore year? I think there has to be a realistic understanding of that approach when it comes to college athletics.
Thank you. There's a question about what a pre-read is.
So pre-read is when a student is being recruited and the coach reaches out to get the transcript, SAT and ACT scores, and then has an admission officer screen it to give a rough estimate. They're non-binding, but a rough estimate of, hey, this is where we think the student would come in from if the student's eligible for admission, and then if the student would be eligible for merit. Those are non-binding types of discussions that the admission office has with the coaching staff. At some institutions, then the coaching staff will then share that information with the student.
Question for Joey. Why is it that you chose Bowdoin? Was it only because of sports, or were there more factors in that decision?
Well, yeah. So in my decision, I was really looking at just schools. So like that's sports didn't really it played a big part in like the final decision, but when I was looking at schools, I was just looking at the campus environment and just like if I wanted to be there as like a student, because like that's really when it comes down to is like it's your college experience, and like that's where you're gonna live for your 4 years. So sports is a big part of it, but I feel like if you find your fit within the school community, then you'll definitely find your fit within like the athletic. So it's like I felt athletic was like on the side, but it still played a role. So, but yeah, I'd say find the school, look for a school more than just focus on if that is a right fit athletically rather than just the school.
Thank you. Does BC High have a dedicated resource to assist student athletes in the recruitment process? Are there specifics on that role?
Yeah, so I think just with each head coach and the number of coaches that we have who have been through this whole process and who do communicate with college coaches, I think we have great resources here. Our guidance counselors have been here, and have done a fabulous job over the years. The athletic department, Mr. Conley, assistant AD, we're accessible. So I think we have the resources, because there's always that question of a third party recruitment firm, which, it's for the parents, it's up to you how you want to spend your money. But I think at the end of the day, they will be doing most of the same things that we're providing by, from our coaches, our staff, and our athletic department. So I think, and that's why with BC High, in the name of BC High, coaches will come here. So I think tapping into the coaches, tapping into the different resources here, all the questions do get answered.
Should you decide to pursue a postgraduate year, I know a lot of independent schools do have someone within the college counseling office that is dedicated to connecting with those athletic liaisons at colleges and universities. I know our guy here, Mr. Sean O'Brien, he's our head hockey coach, but his day-to-day job is to help out every single student athlete with the application process. So we have a massive database for kids that are in every single grade, from ninth grade, if there is collegiate interest, all the way through our postgrads, where he's working with every single coach, similar to what they would do at BC High, but he's the athletic liaison. So if you need your transcript sent to a college or university, he would be the guy to contact. You're going to meet with him every couple of weeks just to make sure that every single person is on the same page, from your head coach, the college counseling office, and any school that you are contacting.
Thank you. Any recommendations about companies that'll edit game video and create films?
Huddle. Student athletes should be able to do it themselves. That's taking ownership of your your recruitment process. That's the one thing that you should know how to do. Every single coach should have access to it. You can get a hyperlink, put it into your social media, send it to coaches, but taking ownership of the highlights in the game film that you have and sending it to those coaches. I definitely push my guys to say, this is what you should be doing. This is what the coaches are looking for. You played in the game. You set up your highlight film. Huddle is the biggest one. There are some others that schools will have, but the biggest one out there that I'm familiar with is Huddle.
Yeah, Joey.
Yeah, just to make a quick note on film. So it's like what I've heard a lot is make the first play and like the first play your best play and make it noticeable, because college coaches don't have that much time. So they're looking for that first spark. So make sure you put your best stuff in the front. Don't wait till the end. Put your best stuff in the front of the film.
And to Coach Patterson's point, I mean, I've heard war stories of the cost to these things and the cost to these companies. And I'm not, trying to ruin anybody's business, but there are ways to film a good play, to put it up on Huddle by yourself and save your family a decent chunk. And, there's editing and this, and some of the videos we see now, it's, Joey just made a great point. It's a huge over landscaping view of their high school. And I'm like, I don't need to see any of this. I want to see this person play. So, and it's an article that came out in Inside Lacrosse and then it's, and the videos look great. They really do. I'm like, this is well made, but it's taken, about a minute and a half for me to see one clip here. And so we're, there's efficiency to those films that Joey hit it on the head that we love, where you click on that link and I see that person play right away. But some information in those is important. If first you can have name, year, GPA, which is honest, and everyone has a 3.6 now. If it's definitely a 3.6, great, but don't just throw it up there. Make sure it's your honest GPA, and then your best contact information and your best coach's contact information. Those help us out a ton.
Thanks so much. This question to any coach: are athletes impacted in the recruiting process even when teams have difficult seasons?
I'm not sure I understand. So does it mean if they didn't have a great season, we'd stop recruiting them?
I'm assuming that,
I think it's wins losses, coach. The team's win losses will let
I don't know. Coach Patterson can answer as well. I think I'm as anxious to see how a young man handles a loss versus how he handles a win. I think both are very important. So we don't hold a great or a huge decision-making platform upon the success of your team. I think we love it when athletes play for highly successful teams. We believe that they're getting good coaching and that they are involved in what wins, what it takes to win. I think at a place like BC High, we would assume that that a lot of work goes into those practices, a lot of work goes into those wins. And I know the head lacrosse coach there very well. I know him to be a very hardworking man. So I think the success on the field, it can help at times. I think if we go back to a couple answers prior, the way that you can articulate what your competitive nature is, how you got to that point, and our evaluation of you as a teammate will come through many different forums. So I can speak for us. We don't cancel a young man off a recruiting list because his team didn't have a great season. We just keep watching and make sure he handles it well.
I can add to that. I can give you the perfect example. Our football season, we played arguably the best team in the Northeast, the Hunt School of Princeton. 9 Division I commits on one side of the ball. Absolutely no business playing against them. We got beat 40-0. The head football coach and the recruiting coordinator from the University of Illinois were at the game. I spoke to them right before. It's like, hey, this is going to be a lopsided affair, but I think you should definitely take a look at a few of these guys on our team and see how they play today. 48 minutes, they're playing against young men just like themselves, and they did well. It all depends. Would we have liked to win the game? Absolutely. But as Coach Raymond said, how do you play through adversity knowing that you technically have no business being on the field with a team like that? Are you going to rise to the occasion and put your best foot forward, or are you going to turtle?
Hey, Heidi, I left my email address. I do have to run. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and that email address is open to all who have any questions that would like to reach out. But thank you again. It was great being on here with you tonight.
Thanks so much, Coach Raymond. We appreciate it. We have a question about AAU or club sports. And are these the best ways for kids to get recognized?
I think there's certainly ways to get, and for certain sports, I think every sport is different, but definitely there are BC High athletes who get recruited in the off season, which is whether it's club, AAU. So it's just another avenue, which I guess is great. It's you have an avenue through the school, and then you have an avenue in the off season. So whatever it takes to get recognized, I think those are just good ways. And I think the same thing with being proactive for your school, if you're on an AAU or club or travel team, to let college coaches know when you're playing, what your schedule is in the off season. A lot of these coaches will go and attend these games. So those are definitely options.
Another question is recruiting based strictly off of film and a video that a player would send you, or is a big part of it based off of potential in that sport?
I think there's a combination. Definitely the evaluation piece, comes from film and watching, the student athlete live. But the interest has to be there as well. And it all depends on the sport, the level, and the atmosphere. I think when, I speak with college coaches, coming to the Hill, they ask, 3 questions. Who are they? How are they doing academically? And then the third, how good are they, at this sport? All 3 of those matter, but, they really want to know like who you are, as a person at the end of the day. Do you fit into their community for the next 4 years? But, you are evaluated based on film and, watching, the student athletes live, but the other piece is going to come from those external factors as well.
Next question about social media. Should the athletes maintain social media related to their sport? Do coaches take notice? Do they follow BC High social media?
Yeah, I can help answer that one. So one thing I did was Twitter. Twitter was really big in my recruiting process because I don't know. So it's like a big, I don't know if it's just football, but then football, like there's a lot of college coaches on Twitter and actively searching on Twitter. So it's what I did for my Twitter to maintain it, was, so you just have name and put all the information in your bio and your Twitter, like name, GPA, SAT, and your sport, your position, and your huddle link in my case for football. And then you can just start retweeting BCI stuff that like a BCI football thing, you would retweet, and the college coach would see that. And then college coaches would also reach out, and you would reach out through Twitter is what I use Twitter for.
I'll throw the cautionary tale of what you put in social media can and will be used against you. So please be careful with what you post. I honestly, admission officers do look at these things from time to time. Coaches absolutely do. And then other students, they see you as a leader on your school. And if you're posting things that are not appropriate, that are offensive, that deal with very tough situations, it can come back to hurt you. So keep it very professional. Think of your Twitter page as something that you would want anybody who is evaluating you on the field or in the classroom to be able to see.
That's a great point, Corey. Yeah, I mean, we tell our athletes, once you press send, you own it. So very, very good advice.
question is for Joey. Who did you use to make your video and do the edits? Did you make it yourself? And what's the standard length of time of the film?
Yeah, so I used Huddle. So I just highlighted the play, and then it was kind of real. If you get Huddle, it's really simple. You just highlight it and then you just put it into a highlight tape. And then, so I'd say like the standard length is like, I want to say like 3 to 5 minutes of like just, so you want to cut down the play and make your best plays first, cut down the play. So it's just the play. And then I'd say just, I think Coach Raymond mentioned this earlier. It's like, make sure you have a start of your name, GPA, SAT, coach's information, just in the front of the slide, and then just best play on there. So yeah.
I think we may have addressed this later or earlier, but I've forgotten. Would coaches recommend using a third-party recruiting service?
I think
I'll just chime
survey
in.
said-
Oh, go ahead,
survey said no. Yeah, like we said earlier, up to the parents how they want to handle this. Speaking just for BC High, I think we do a great job with our coaches, our guidance department, athletic department, with being resources to the families on the recruitment process and helping with the student athletes.
To echo that, I think there's a great amount of consultants that work to try to get students into specific colleges from either a athletic or from an admission standpoint. You've made the wise investment of sending your son to BC High, and they have the right people there that will help get your son to the appropriate place. And so I would save your money and invest it in your 529. You're going to get a lot more bang for your buck rather than the independent consultant rule.
Joey, question for you. Did Bowdoin have a camp that you were invited to? This is a family is asking about NESCAC schools. I'm curious.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure most NESCAC schools do have an open camp where you can, in the summer, where you can go and showcase your skills. So yeah, I feel like, yeah. So I wasn't specifically invited to a camp, but I didn't go to one, but they do hold camps. And a lot of my friends who I play with now did get offered and like offered a spot on the team from the camp. So if you are interested in like a specific NESCAC school, definitely see what, like you can look up dates for the camps and definitely attend. They're definitely worthwhile. And let's say just one thing for NESCAC schools that they take in really to account is your GPA and your test scores. So it's like, make sure if you're going to a NESCAC school, like make sure you get your grades right. And because that's one thing my coach always told me was like, they look at the GPA before they even look at the film. Like you need to qualify academically for NESCAC before they actually take serious consideration in you as a player.
May I add to Joey's point, there are a ton of schools that will offer one-day camps and ask you to pay $75 to $100 to attend a one-day camp for 2-3 hours. Definitely do your research. There are larger universities that will offer, student athletes, in regard to, to football. I'm thinking of the BC High football camp. They will invite all of the area coaches that essentially they do not compete against to evaluate the student athletes that are attending their camp. Not everyone is going to be recruited from BC High. So you may see the Dartmouth coach there. You may see the Bowdoin coach there. You may see the Bentley coach there. New England Elite does a fantastic job of inviting almost every single college and university to their camp. There's about 800 football players there at Bentley for a 2-day camp, but part of their process, they have, I think, over 50 to 60 college coaches actually working the camp themselves, where they can be on the field and evaluate the student athletes there. So I know every single NESCAC has definitely attended that camp. Some schools do offer one-day camps, but also do your research into some of the larger universities that will offer and have other college coaches helping them out.
Joey, how did you find out about the New England Elite Camp?
So I think just the football coach at the time, I think Coach Velasquez helped me out with that one. He's like, try to get a group of guys to go to that one. So and it's like a big deal. I think in the football community, it's just everyone knows about New England Elite, and just it's a big camp, a lot of schools. So it's a good way to get recognized.
There was just another comment about Huddle applying to high school for rather than club sports. And so a question about finding someone to tape. So, you know, I'm not sure if anyone has comments on that.
Yeah. If you want to tape as a parent or guardian, get to the highest vantage point where you can follow the game from the center of the, of the stands, where you're getting, the full hockey rink, the soccer pitch, baseball diamond, football field, whatever the case may be. Don't talk, record so that they can see as much as possible. YouTube is free. You can send YouTube links to coaches as well. I know, especially a lot of the summer showcases for lacrosse or other sports, parents are recording it with their phone. I mean, we have high-tech cameras on our iPhones, Androids, whatever the case may be. Try to have the film be as steady as possible, and then just upload it to YouTube. That's how a lot of student athletes that are applying to the Hill School will send their film. So I just ask that the parents at least mute themselves, or they mute the volume, so I don't have to hear "Go Johnny Go" when they're running the ball, and then just upload it to YouTube and go from there. So that way, when you do get to a place like BC High or the Hill School, you have access to Huddle, because most, if not every school, exchanges film that way. So it's very easy for our student athletes to be involved. And it's also a way for coaches to communicate with their student athletes, regardless of the sport. So if you do not have access to Huddle within your high school, definitely YouTube is a great thing. Google Drives are a great thing. You can film it with your iPhone, your iPad, whatever the case may be, upload it and share it that way.
Excellent. And just one more question for Orlando. When is it too late for a student to reach out to a prep school to consider a PG year?
I would say 2 weeks before school starts. That is extremely too late. The number of student athletes that unfortunately, may have had their offers rescinded for a variety of reasons, whether it's social media, or they didn't finish the school year the right way, or they firmly believe that they are a much better player than they are. It's extremely tough for a coach to convince admissions to say, we really need this kid, 2 weeks before, school starts. For our process, we are allowed to enroll 4 to 5 postgraduates. I want to be done by April 1st. Deposits should be rolling in for April 1st here. That way, if a college option is still on the table, you have that opportunity to make a deposit at a college. Or if you're accepted to, a great college university, and you happen to be accepted, here at the Hill School, weigh your options. What is best for you. But essentially the same timeline that we would use at the college and university level, we use here at the Hill School. So right now, if the college recruiting process isn't really working for you, reach out to some independent schools, and I'm happy to help any family out there that is interested in a postgraduate year, help you find the right place for what you're looking for, because there are quite a few schools.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the thoughtful responses and the great questions, and just wanted to say thank you so much to our panelists for giving up their evenings to share their wisdom with the BC High community. This is going to conclude our evening. As a reminder, we'll have a recording to the webinar that's going to be coming out in the Eagle update, which will come out this Thursday, including some resources that will help kind of summarize the main points from tonight. But thank you so much, and wishing everyone a wonderful evening and a safe rest of the year.
Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.